Let's go!
It's funny, I was looking at the old Armored Core stuff, and I was like, I feel like this game's coming out way sooner, right? Yeah, this game's coming out way sooner than any of us were like anticipating, because it is. I was like, was Armored Core announced like at Summer Games Fest last year or something like that? And it wasn't. It was Game Awards. It was like late 2022. I guess that is pretty fast, like an 8-month turnaround for a game that we have seen. You know, I'm assuming this trailer has a little bit of gameplay in it. Game that's coming out relatively soon for gameplay that has not really been disclosed yet. I'm only assuming that whatever happens in the not E3 timeframe, playable stuff that I might be playing that is Bandai Namco related, that just maybe I'll be playing a little bit of Armored Core 6, which would be very nice. I feel like there's a lot of like app criticisms because they came out and they said, they're like, yo, Armored Core is actually not a Souls Core game, right? It is not specifically that. It is an Armored Core game at its core, you know, lol. Which is fascinating because I don't think a lot of us were anticipating that. It's funny, it's like, so what like makes a Souls game? Like big interconnected world, you die, you drop your loot, you got to get it back, like the old Souls formula, right? Estus flasks of some kind that you can upgrade. Yeah, granted. In those games, those are absolutely the things that like other devs kind of take from it, right? Like when devs think of like Souls elements, they start to take those kind of things, right? What's funny is that I don't think that stuff is actually what makes the Souls games great. I'll just spitball before we've actually seen this trailer, before we're talking about like, because there's a ton of interviews. We had the proper media blowout today to learn what the hell's going on with Armored Core 6. I don't have much experience with it, right? We've played very little of it. It's an obtuse, weird game. We played Armored Core 1 or 2 on PlayStation 1, and these games are friggin' funky, right? I come from the land of like Virtual On and stuff like that. When we were doing this stuff, there was like 1 billion customization options on your little, you know, 16 polygon mecha guy as you're flying around, and the flying around and boosting and stuff isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. So for me, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Armored Core stuff is going to be so good. And I really don't know what that is, but here's what I hope a modern FromSoft takes from all their other Souls games, right? All their essential modern design philosophy and mechanics and approach that has made them an absolute metric shit ton of money, all the way up to Elden Ring. What are the things that I hope actually carry over from their modern design principles? Here's a big one: boss fights. Boss fights have to be big, they have to be epic, and they have to be interesting. They have to be fascinating. They have to be like on a scale that feels cool. This is a FromSoft staple now. The other thing, atmospheric storytelling. I really hope they do this. I actually hope they keep with the overall theming of all of their other games in terms of how the storytelling is approached, instead of just having characters just drop dialogue, you know, all the way through. I'm assuming that whatever world they're going into, they're going to possibly approach this with the storytelling tact as some of their other games. The other one is probably insanely impactful music that you might only hear every once in a while, like during boss fights. There's very important sequences. The music will probably be really important. And the last but not least, I have a pen and I'm like pointing at you. What is the most important thing in a FromSoft game? Many would say the combat. Many would say the bosses. Many would say the gameplay loop. All fantastic answers, actually great answers. But it's not, it's the level design. Level design in Souls games sells every single one of these games, from Sekiro to Dark Souls to Bloodborne and to Elden Ring. The level design of FromSoft is unfucking matched in this industry, bro. Every other game tries to do this shit, and it looks easy, and every single other game that tries to do this ends up being kind of boring. And it's like, well, what is it that makes FromSoft games so different, so unique, that every single one of them, you know, outside of, I'd say, vanilla Dark Souls 2, which is pretty rough, what makes all these games so captivating? And it really is the level design. The level design is the hero of every single Souls game. If there's one thing that I hope the modern design principles of FromSoft carry over, please, dear God, carry over all of your incredible level design that they have handcrafted for the past 10, 15 years. I hope all that shit is there. I really do. Now I'm gonna shut the hell up and let's watch this goddamn trailer. Yeah, I had to look up my reaction video and be like, when did this thing actually, when did we see Armored Core the first time? And it was something like 4 or 5 months ago. That's it.
We're close to Rubicon. Wake the dog up.
Handler Walter verified. Activating cerebral coral control device.
Are all those dead satellites around the planet? Just debris. Levels. Ooh, okay. Levels. Wow. Lots of different levels.
Augmented human C4621 has awakened.
Oh my god, the scale. Holy shit. Holy shit, the scale. That's definitely mecha-ass mecha action. Cool. This dude just rolling in. Okay. All right, there's a drift dozer. We're getting a look at a lot of different, like, abilities and archetypes. A lot of customization, custom builds I'm seeing.
One of the infamous Handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. You ready to climb the wall?
Call sign Raven. Priority subject for termination. High on the list.
A coral response from the generator.
Dude, jeez, all this boosting around and shit. Oh my god.
I hide behind another's call sign.
Oh my god, what the hell? I'm seeing some absolutely massive enemies.
Let's see how far they can fly. On borrowed wings.
The music. The music. I'm going back. Oh my god, dude. Holy shit. That's pretty sick looking. I tell you what, this theme right here. I want to listen to it again.
One of the infamous Handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. You ready to climb the wall?
Call sign
Dude,
Raven.
this theme.
Priority
Holy
subject for
shit.
termination. High on the list.
Actually got goosebumps.
A coral response from the generator.
This shit. Okay, this is what I'm in for. This is the shit I am 100% in for, and I'm ready. Like super snappy control feeling mecha stuff. Granted, you'll be able to customize that, right? You can choose what the hell you want to do. But just seeing like, you know, like a dozer bot like rolling in and drifting around and shit, it's like, buddy, buddy, what?
A coral response from the generator.
This is the shit. Yes.
Watch
Avoiding
out.
a billion missiles while properly timing some boosts.
Why
Yes.
hide behind another's call sign?
Let's see how far they can fly.
Okay.
On borrowed wings.
this has a chance at being the most successful mecha game likely ever. Potentially in a month, hopefully, we'll actually be able to play it and feel what it's like. But this is the stuff that makes me the most excited. Right here, where it's like gameplay, same camera angle, everything.
Watch out.
Why hide behind another's call sign?
This is literally mecha porn, right? This is literally giant fucking robot porn.
What's up, everyone? My name is Mitchell Saltzman, and today I'm joined remotely all the way from Japan by producer Yasunori Ogura to talk all about Armored Core 6. How are you?
Yeah, Zoe's more Mecha May Cry. That's what I remember.
From Software, producer on Armored Core 6. It's great to be here.
How long has Armored Core 6 been in development, and what has it been like for From Software to return to this franchise that was such a big part of the company for such a long time?
So we have been cultivating development staff through our experience with recent titles, and there were many members of staff, including Miyazaki and myself, who've wanted to make a new Armored Core game for a long time.
Almond.
So,
I like those Almond Cool games. I'm gonna turn this off. The Almond Cool game.
really, not making a new Armored Core was never really an option. It was a case of when rather than if.
Yeah, because Armored Core was announced forever ago. Like, I feel like it was announced before even Sekiro came out, dude.
The game's direction and development. In around 2018, Miyazaki and some core members of the team began initial direction and forming the basic core concept of AC6. And after prototyping was complete, our director Yamamura took over on the project. However, as you know, we have several projects going on at the same time within the company, so we had to get an ideal allocation of resources. We had to get the right staff on board, which resulted in a slightly longer wait, but we're happy to finally bring a new Armored Core to our fans.
Because the dude that's working on this one is the, or is this guy the lead Sekiro guy? From what I remember, like they were getting the Sekiro dude to take this game, which makes sense because he jumped off of Sekiro back in like 2018-ish, something like that, and then from Sekiro directly like picked up the Armored Core project. Oh, the combat designer is from Sekiro. He's the director of Sekiro. Gotcha.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the story of Armored Core 6 and whether newcomers will be able to jump right into this entry if they haven't played any of the other ones?
This is a brand new story and has no direct link to previous titles.
Of course.
AC6 takes place in a future where interstellar travel is commonplace, not on Earth, but on a fictional planet in a distant star system called Rubicon 3. Rubicon is a devastated planet that was razed to ash in a great disaster caused by the outbreak of a mysterious new substance called coral.
Activating cerebral coral control device.
Which occurred half a century before the events of the game take place. At the outset of the game and the story, the player learns that coral, which was thought lost in this great disaster, has been rediscovered, and extraterrestrial corporate forces have begun an invasion race to acquire the rights to this mysterious and powerful new substance. So they are at conflict with the indigenous forces who are resisting their invasion on the planet Rubicon. And the player, as a lone independent mercenary and AC pilot, is thrust into this Rubicon war for coral. So although AC6 is a novel title, the setting and story are completely new, and we believe it makes a great first entry into the series for newcomers and old fans alike.
It's funny that the story is essentially like a resource war. This is like just one step, Mecha Dune for the most part, where it's like the people on the planet are defending their resources / their planet, and all these people are trying to get a hold of the spice, except it's the coral in this situation. But it's funny how Final Fantasy 16, the overarching story of the game is that, yeah, it's a resource battle between nations to get, you know, the crystals or whatever, right? So it's essentially mecha spice.
We're close to Rubicon. Wake the dog up.
So let's talk a little bit about Rubicon as a setting. Is there anything that's unique about the planet that will allow for kind of unique mission structures that people haven't seen in the Armored Core series previously?
There are two things we'd like to convey to both newcomers and old hands to the series. Armored Core offers two unique game experiences. First is this dynamic, three-dimensional action that can only be achieved with mechs. And the second is the ability to customize your own personal AC by combining multiple parts and decorating it to your liking with painting and decals and the like.
And here's the thing is that part of AC like 1 and 2 and the very brief part I played of it was kind of weird, right? Like in all these old games, they have like a concept like of how they do it, but in the PS2 PS1 era, it's like, well, we don't know how to make that simple or like easy to do because it should be. So in most of those old games, like the customization aspect of it just comes across as like, whoa, like fuck, I'm doing what? How am I doing this? I'm doing what? Not that it hasn't always been there. It's always been there, but dealing with that stuff and having it make such a huge impact and not really knowing, like, you have to really like mess around with it because it feels clunky. It's one of those things where this might be like the game that will 100% make this way more accessible, and hopefully, once again, in the same way that I bitch about fighting games, you can make that more accessible and simpler, right? But you need to expand it, right? It has to, as long as you keep all the cool stuff that you could do back in the day, just make it easier to do now, but allow us more shit to be done with it, and everyone will be happy, right? As long as you get more things you can do with it that have never been done before in AC, classic AC fans will be super happy, and you'll also have something that actually makes sense to play in 2023, you know?
So these player-assembled, player-controlled ACs are able to fly freely through the air and handle multiple weapons simultaneously and turn on a dime, dash in different directions at once.
And also the controls. like obviously, like once your mecha is in the air and you're flying around and doing all this kind of shit, right? Like that, now I can actually pilot these mechs and have it feel really good and snappy, you know? That's the kind of stuff that I hope the modern FromSoft carries over from their other games into this game.
This makes for a dynamic and very aggressive combat style that makes full use of the three-dimensional space, and we feel that this has always been an appeal of the Armored Core series and is an appeal of the mech action genre.
For die-hard Armored Core fans,
I'm gonna keep interjecting every once in a while. This was the reason that my favorite mecha games back in the day were almost strictly gameplay related, and it was Virtual On stuff. Because what is Virtual On? It's essentially what they're pitching here, right? In the vein of an arena-based fighting game, right? Which is essentially what VO is. But in VO, it's snappy, right? The controls in that game are obtuse, but especially if you have twin sticks, they make a lot more sense. And they can be kind of weird to play, but that game is absolutely more approachable with how you're going to move this big mecha thing around and do all this shit.
So what are the elements of Armored Core 6 that those hardcore fans are going to find appealing about this game?
With AC6, one area we focused on was to make sure that the customization aspect is not just about parameters going up and down and numerical values changing, but how these changes are reflected in the feel of the action as much.
This guy just tell me that our customization and gear that you get isn't going to be about micro stat management, which has been like littering games for like 3 to 4 years now, right? Are we saying that all these little stupid 0.3% increase to your poison resistance, but it's this crazy body piece. Here's your 3% stat increase to damage against enemy tank mines specifically. Oh. That shit sucks, right? I do not like that. That's like, to me, that comes across as sort of lazy. No more 1.5% increases. Yeah, change the way the goddamn thing feels. Change the way I play the game. And that's what he's describing.
Much as possible. In particular, the leg parts, which control the AC's movement, you might have a tank type legs that can perform drift turns, and this changes the very basic behavior and traversal type of the AC.
That fucking shot, dude. This thing drifting. shooting like crazy. Oh my god, I gotta go back and watch it.
And this changes the very basic behavior and traversal type of the AC.
That
We also
shot.
made sure that the behavior of weapons, such as the way they shoot, how they recoil, how their projectiles behave, we tried to make sure that this all makes a big difference in how the game feels and plays.
So obviously a thing that, you know, probably contributed to Souls games over time is now probably contributing to Armored Core is the deep amount of customization and move sets that you can get by just going out into the world and getting stuff, right? So that's cool, right? It's just an expansion of what the original Armored Core design is, which might have actually had an impact later on Souls games, which is like, oh man, here's what you can do with all this stuff. Here's what you can do with all these things. They sort of applied that to like Demon Souls and Dark Souls and stuff with how much approachability a player has and how you want to play the game with a ton of different types of weapons, a ton of different types of gear. So to me, it feels like we're just coming full circle. It feels like AC has had this, and you know, that's the thing that is now huge in FromSoft games in general.
A bit about that customization. Armored Core games have a bit of a reputation for being very complex, with many stats to consider, parts to swap in.
Good question.
Is there anything else that you guys are planning on doing with Armored Core 6 to make it a little more approachable for newcomers who might not be used to that level of complexity?
As you mentioned, Armored Core has always been a game with many parameters and is a game where you can enjoy the complexity and depth it offers, but we feel it's also a game where you can enjoy simply by assembling your AC without thinking too deeply about it, and adjust the appearance to your liking and simply get out there and pilot it and take it into combat. That said, in regard to new players, we've taken careful steps with the onboarding and level design in the early stages of the game, so that players can deepen their understanding step by step, little by little, and work their way into that fun of the more complex parts. We've also prepared a training simulator where the player can learn the basics of action and assembly using sample ACs, and we've also tried to make the controls more intuitive, so that we hope that those who have no experience with the series will feel free to enter and enjoy the feel of piloting their very own.
Everything he mentioned is stuff that they learned from the Souls games, right? Everything you've mentioned, the onboarding of players through level design at the beginning, the you know, the approach to controls, the approach to, this is all accessibility stuff that they kind of have learned over time, where yeah, like if you just want the game to be easy and fun and just sort of like just wait for this big thing to go up and hey, I'm better now, then you can do that, right? You can actually do that.
Are there any lessons that you guys have learned over the many years you've spent developing the Souls games that you take into the development of Armored Core 6, even though they're kind of two very different genres?
Armored Core 6 is an attempt to take both the knowledge and experience gained from the development of our previous titles and combine it with the fun of mech customization that the AC series has always embraced.
And there we go.
And in this sense, we hope to create a new mech action game that is worthy of modern From Software standards. Specifically, we're developing this game with an awareness of the things that From Software has always embraced in its other action games, such as a intricate map structure, combat design that allows players to deal with enemies by carefully observing their movements.
Oh man, it's just Souls shit.
And the ability to overcome challenging situations with ingenuity and creativity.
Oh, this is literally what I was talking about. Literally all the three things that I don't think are specific to Souls games, right, but have become an integral part of Souls games.
These are all, of course, things we've kept in mind with AC6 as well. However, as you mentioned, the basic format and genre of Armored Core is completely different from games in, for instance, the Souls lineage. So there are no aspects of the game mechanics or gameplay that can be directly observed.
Right, and he's like, for example, the control scheme will likely be very different. If there's one thing in Souls games that has kind of remained the way it is for a long time, has been the very impactful change of what the attack buttons are. Right, and almost every single game that came before Demon Souls and Dark Souls, you don't put attack buttons on R1 and R2. What the hell are you doing? That's some stupid shit. But at that point forward, every single thing has been doing that, right? Like every single game has been that way, which is a very Souls-like thing. I wouldn't be surprised if the control scheme of Armored Core, for what they're setting up, is not Souls-like. That would make sense, right? That would actually make sense if they try to not put attack on R1 and R2 or shoot just over there. If they utilize these buttons over here, because once again, this is a much more 3D game than any of these other fucking games. So what if those triggers are used to realign cameras and do all that kind of stuff? Once again, a camera system changing inherently from what a game like Souls games does is probably one of the most resounding things that can go through a fucking overhaul, dude. Like, let's make the camera be a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more interesting, because the fucking FromSoft camera just is always the same thing in every single game. You know what I mean?
Can you talk a little bit about your goals with the combat design, and are there any kind of mechanics that players should know about that perhaps didn't exist in previous Armored Core games?
In terms of points we focused on this time around, I would say that individuality of the melee weapons is one of the key points.
Yeah, and the little bit I played of Armored Core, I'm perking here. A little bit I played of Armored Core, it's a lot of shooty shoots, right? There's some melee stuff, but if you went in and started like attacking dudes, at least in AC 1 or 2, you got fucked up, man. So you had to like stay away from most of the experience I've seen. It's a pew pew game. So what is another series of games that really focuses on strong melee attacks and stuff like that? Well, I mean, clearly, you know, that's the whole point of the Souls games, is like, got some new thing. What the fuck is the moveset of it, you know? Yeah, I'd imagine that changes later in later Armored Cores, like 4 to 6 or something like that, or 4 and 5.
Armored Core is mainly a shooting game at heart, and that's exactly why we had this policy of having more unique melee weapons this time around. So in addition to the well-known pile bunker and the cluster bomb launcher that you might have seen in the trailer, there are also a variety of weapons with different animations and more unconventional characteristics,
cool,
such as a chainsaw and a laser lance, and things like this.
Cool.
In the trailer, you may have also seen a part where the core is deployed by an AC to generate a shockwave, and the pile bunker is then used against an opponent who is reeling back from this shockwave. This kind of building combos with multiple weapons aspect is an appeal of AC6's unique assembly and combat, and we hope the players will enjoy using their creativity and asking themselves, what combination of weapons can I use to create my ideal combo attacks and secure victory?
So is there any one new thing, whether it's a mechanic or a mech part?
And I'm kind of a stickler for this, and I've complained when a few other franchises haven't done it when they clearly could. My only gripe with it is that the game is a spiritual reboot of Armored Core, set in like a different world, different fantasy, different storytelling, right? Different everything. It's essentially Armored Core like rebooted. So why call it Armored Core 6 at that point? It's been gone for so long that to me there's very little reason to keep the number to it, right? There's very little reason. AC has been rebooted 4 times. Jesus. Then there's still really, there hasn't been this much of a passage of time though, right? And that's the thing to me that is like, that makes the marketability kind of challenging, which is the inherent issue that people have, which is it's called 6, right? And I've never even heard of this before. It's different than a Final Fantasy, which has been kept in your peripheral vision consistently forever, right? Forever. But Armored Core hasn't been that. This is a lot of people that have been playing Souls games for the past 10, 15 years and never even heard of AC before. So now there is this thing that is suddenly this 6th iteration, so yada, yada, yada. So I don't know. Like, I'd almost prefer in situations like this that Armored Core just gets called Armored Core. In the same way, if there was a new Virtua Fighter, should it be called Virtua Fighter 6? Fuck no, dude. It's been plenty of time. Just call it Virtua Fighter. And it was the same thing that irked me about Soul Calibur 6, which actually ended up hurting it. And Soul Calibur 6 ended up not selling as much as they wanted. And I don't think that helped, right? I really don't think that situation helped. When there's that much of a passage of time, I feel like you can just... everything's being reset anyway. Why don't we just call it Armored Core, period, you know?
Or a weapon that you're particularly proud of and are excited for players to experience in Armored Core 6?
I'd like players to mostly look forward to something we touched on earlier, which is this using their ingenuity and creativity to create a combination of their own making, and a combination of the various parts and weapons at their disposal. So, for example, they might be dashing across the battlefield while shooting ballistic weapons and letting missiles fly in every which direction. These missiles will connect with their enemy, knock them off balance, and then they'll use their assault boost to dash in with a quick burst of speed and finish with a melee strike.
So that's the gameplay loop, right? That's now the focused gameplay loop, is to essentially stagger / weaken enemies, and then they essentially hit the deck vulnerable to strike attacks, and then you zip the fuck in and beat the shit out of them, which probably does way more damage than range zoning, right? Cool. You know? Cool. That'll probably have a lot of different ways you can do that shit.
This kind of player-created combo and their own unique combination of weaponry and mobility will allow for this new aggressive, offensive style of AC combat, and we hope this is something that reinvigorates the series and that new and old fans alike can enjoy.
Multiplayer has always been a big part of the Armored Core series. Is there anything you can tell us about multiplayer in Armored Core 6?
So I believe ACV was more focused on multiplayer as the last title in the series, but first of all, the main content of AC6 is positioned as single-player campaign mode where you progress through a more traditional mission structure. There will be an online PvP mode where players can compete against each other with ACs they have built and share their AC data and emblems of their own making with other users.
So here is a thing that absolutely differentiates Armored Core from the Souls games. Every single fucking Souls games has a weird, cumbersome online co-op thing to them outside of Sekiro, right? So no like summoning, no weird interconnected world multiplayer lore bullshit. There's a PvP versus mode, right? So granted, I'm not super excited about that. FromSoft netcode is never been great. But in the same way, that is a differentiator absolutely from what their other endeavors in online multiplayer have been, which is good. That's fine. The reason that shit has been that way, by the way, is that they inherently designed Demon's Souls and the follow-up games to be so fucking difficult that the whole point of them is that people will join in, right? Is that people will join your fucking world and help you through things, and there will be a camaraderie of the player base to get you through these absolutely insane challenges. That is carried through like every game going until like Elden Ring sends like Sekiro, right? So maybe this game just doesn't need that.
But first and foremost, the story missions in AC6 are single player only. We would like players to go in there, become the lone mercenary lifestyle, and enjoy this aspect of the game first and foremost. We do hope to share more details about the online aspect at a later date, so please stay tuned for that.
Most likely will be PvP stuff.
Let's see how far they can fly. On borrowed wings.
All right, well, that about wraps it up. Ogura-san, thank you so much for your time. Armored Core 6 fires.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of moments in there that exude a lot of confidence. And you know what? That's good. FromSoft has been making a lot of the same shit in very similar ways for a long time now. Now 3 franchises that are essentially the same thing with minor differences. Bloodborne, Elden Ring, and, you know, the Souls series. And then you obviously have Sekiro, which is a little different, right? Which does definitely try to do stuff, you know, significantly different than the others, but still comes across as very Soulsy in many ways. It feels like a departure. It feels like we want to take the things that work really well in Souls games, but the gameplay loop, the individual character combat loop, that stuff will be substantially different. And it's going to be like mecha porn.